The history of rock and roll is full of major groups that helped shape things and created stars via their musical talents. And one of the biggest ones of the lot was that of Motley Crue.
I'm on the way. I'm on the way.
Because here was a group of rebels and bad boys who went on to get fans rocking and shouting at their hits, one after another. It's true that they've had quite a history, including some serious lineup changes over the years, but it's honestly all paid off in the end. And their legacy is one that many music fans will remember. So with that, allow us to show you Motley Crue, then and now. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The beginning of The Crue. Motley Crue was formed on January 17, 1981, when bassist Nikki Sixx left the band London and began rehearsing with drummer Tommy Lee and vocalist/guitarist Greg Leon. Lee had previously worked with Leon in a band called Sweet 19, and the trio practiced together for some time. Leon eventually decided not to continue with them. Sixx and Lee then began a search for new members, and soon met guitarists Robin Moore, Jeff Gill, and Bob Deal, better known as Mick Mars. After answering an advertisement that he placed in the recycler that read, "Loud, rude, and aggressive guitar player available," Mars auditioned for Sixx, Moore, and Lee, and was subsequently hired while Moore was fired at the same session, according to the band's biography, The Dirt. Although a lead vocalist named Odin was auditioned, Lee had known Vince Neil from their high school days at Charter Oak High School, Covina, California, and the two had performed in different bands on the garage band circuit. Upon seeing him perform with the band Rock Candy at the Starwood in Hollywood, California, Mars suggested they have Neil join the band. At first, Neil refused the offer, but as the other members of Rock Candy became involved in outside projects, Neil grew anxious to try something else. Lee asked again, and Neil was hired on April 1st, 1981. And the band played its first gig at the Starwood nightclub on April 24th. The newly formed band did not yet have a name. Sixx has said that he told his bandmates that he was thinking about calling the band Christmas. The other members were not very receptive to that idea. Then, while trying to find a suitable name, Mars remembered an incident that occurred when he was playing with a band called White Horse, when one of the other band members called the group a motley-looking crew. He had remembered the phrase and later copied it down as Motley Crue. After modifying the spelling slightly, Motley Crue was eventually selected as the band's name, with the stylistic decision suggested by Neil to add the two sets of metal umlauts, supposedly inspired by the German beer Lowenbrau, which the members were drinking at the time. Other than the periods of February 1992 to September 1996, and of March 1999 to September 2004, the lineup of Neil, Sixx, Lee, and Mars remained the same. Starting out. Obviously, forming the group is only half of the battle. You have to go and make your name out there, right? And that's what they set out to do. They got a manager and started to produce music. Their first album, though, in Too Fast for Love, wasn't exactly a smash hit. It only sold 20,000 copies. However, they were getting fame via their live performances in LA via the club scene, and as such, they were able to get a tour in Canada as well as a record deal with Elektra Records. And that's where things started to take an interesting turn, because technically, the tour in Canada was a bomb, but because of a series of staged PR stunts, including destroying property, being arrested multiple times, calling in a bomb threat, and more, they were getting international press attention. And when you get attention, you get people curious about yourself. The band eventually switched managers and started to use the attention to their advantage. Rise to fame. The band became rapidly successful in the United States after playing at the US Festival in May of 1983, and also with the aid of the new medium of MTV. Their second album, Shout at the Devil, was released in September 1983. The album represented the band's mainstream breakthrough and would eventually be certified 4 times platinum. But, as you might have guessed, there was a lot of controversy surrounding that, including the fact that there was a lot of Satanism imagery in their music and art. Back in the 80s especially, this was a very dark and touchy subject, as parents didn't want their kids anywhere near that. Did that matter to fans and certain music makers? Nope. In fact, Ozzy Osbourne himself asked them to open for his Bark at the Moon tour. Their success continued with their third album, Theater of Pain, which went quadruple platinum. However, it was very much during that album that the men of Motley Crue realized their issues. Addictions and law issues. You see, while the Motley Crue were indeed rockers and didn't mind doing hardcore-style shows, you were also living the hardcore rocker lifestyle for better and for worse. For example, their first single, Too Fast for Love, was apparently sang when they were all drunk. They were infamous for getting into real trouble with the law. And one time, one of their members was drunk behind the wheel, and that ended up with him getting into a car accident that led to another band's drummer getting killed. And this says nothing of the time when Six overdosed and almost died, and was literally put into a dumpster by his dealer. Though it should also be noted that this was the inspiration for the song Dancing on Glass. It would be these issues that would very much cause the end of the band in certain ways, because it affected them both personally and creatively, but not before continuing their run as top rockers. Girls, Girls, Girls. The band's fourth album was Girls, 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 and while it debuted at number 2 on the charts, certain members of the band felt that it was some dealing by the labels and the Billboard charts that it wasn't number 1. But even with that conspiracy theory, many of the band members noted that the quality of the music was hurt once again by the antics of the band itself. And those antics were only getting worse with time. On December 23, 1987, Six suffered a heroin overdose. He was declared legally dead on the way to the hospital, but the paramedic, who was a Crue fan, revived Six with 2 shots of adrenaline. His 2 minutes in death were the inspiration for the song Kickstart My Heart, which peaked at number 16 on the mainstream US chart. It was this and certain other incidents that led to an intervention by the band for the band, and they all went into rehab to try and get clean so they could achieve their full potential and not find themselves in body bags, as one band member put it. Dr. Feelgood. After finding sobriety in 1989, Motley Crue reached its peak popularity with the release of their 5th album, The Bob Rock, produced by Dr. Feelgood. It reached the number 1 spot on the charts and stayed on the charts for 114 weeks. It remains their only number 1 album. It also was an album that got not 1 but 2 Grammy nominations for their songs Dr. Feelgood and Kickstart My Heart. It was a high point followed by a massive world tour that left the band even more successful, but also burnt out. They bunkered down to try and make more music, but old habits and issues would take things to another level. Replacements and hiatus. Eventually, as the music world started to change, Motley Crue started to see its core group break up. Some were fired, others left for solo careers, and even though the band did get a win by owning their master recordings, a huge deal in the music industry, it wasn't the same, and the band went on hiatus. What followed was a very typical thing for rock groups such as these. There were reunions, fights, lawsuits, more reunions, a couple more world tours, and then a retirement from touring, which was undone for another world tour, and so on and so forth. As for the legacy of Motley Crue, they are both something to be inspired by, and yet be a cautionary tale about as well, because there's no doubt that Motley Crue helped shape certain parts of rock and roll, but they're also proof that if you're not careful, you can all but implode by living that hard rock lifestyle. They are far from perfect, and that will be admitted by them in various ways, but they were able to get mostly better, and their music is eternal, and will be remembered fondly for years and decades to come. So, what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.